And we're back with the Dr. Joe Show, talking about probably the number one topic that a lot of people are brought up to not talk about.
Yeah, so true with Professor Grace Howard. So we've been talking about Roe v. Wade and the ramifications and the criminalization, basically, of a woman's rights to protect her own body. Professor Howard, we spoke a little bit offline. Where are we in this discussion at this point? Where do we go?
Well, so we've just been talking about all of this stuff that, folks have been able to get away with doing to people with the protection of Roe v. Wade on the books, right? And now that's just gone away. So where people were maybe getting arrested when they go to give birth, and we're bringing charges then, I'm expecting now, and this is based on things that I've seen cops, district attorneys, healthcare providers in these states saying, that now we can go earlier, right? Because viability isn't an issue anymore. Roe v. Wade, spelled out that a person who is pregnant still counts as a person fully, and they have full rights to their body until viability, which was like, oh, that's such a low bar, right? But we don't even have that anymore. And so, this is technically true already in Alabama. This was true with Roe v. Wade on the books, but I think we'll start seeing this in more places where, technically speaking, if you were like 2 hours pregnant and you drank a beer, you are technically a felony child abuser in that state, right?
Even if you don't know that you're pregnant.
Even if you don't know that you're pregnant. Yes, they specified that knowledge of pregnancy is irrelevant, right?
So for substance abuse folks, this could be a blessing, right? So nobody should drink or do any drugs ever. I'm being
telling people that works great, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. And so, most of the cases that I've seen did involve folks who were struggling with substance use disorder, became pregnant, and now what do we do? Yeah. Right. And apparently our answer to that was like, put them in cages. Hasn't been great health-wise. I'm seeing some stuff happening already, though. Obviously, there's all this kinds of trigger laws going into effect in various states. Kind of watching the update almost hourly to see, like, okay, are you allowed to do X, Y, and Z in Texas? But I've been noticing some other stuff too. So I've already been seeing that if you are someone who seems like you could become pregnant, I guess like female-ish and of reproductive age, some healthcare providers are not prescribing needed medications anymore to these patients because they're worried if you become pregnant, this medication could cause a miscarriage. And so I'm sorry that you have lupus. I'm sorry that you have rheumatoid arthritis. I'm sorry that you got long COVID and you need this medication for clotting, but it could cause a miscarriage and you look like you could get knocked up. So we're not going to give you these pills.
Some tear gas.
Can I ask you a question, Professor?
Yes.
How did you become so passionate about this topic?
So I was, I got all fired up, don't I? Well, so I wasn't really raised as a feminist, but some of these issues, even back in like middle school, seeing the injustices of like a little sister watching her big brother getting treated like a guy, and being like, this isn't fair. Kind of those early feminist origins. But when I was in college, I got much more involved and interested in reproductive rights, in sexual politics, frankly. I'm a victim of sexual violence. And for me, learning as much as I could about bodies and about sex and about reproduction was like this really healing, empowering thing. It's a knowledge that I wish I had had at a much earlier age. I think it would have helped me maybe contextualize and understand some things. And so, I got involved in campus groups and was writing all of my little college papers on these issues. And
Did you have any family that was upset?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got some awesome kind of pagan aunts. But my mom is so not into this stuff at all.
Is she pro-life?
I guess. Yeah. It's complicated with her. It's the sound of some foster cats that I have.
So do you have conversations with your mother about it?
Not anymore. We don't really talk anymore. But
so how did this conversation become the most divisive, most heated conversation that the world has ever seen?
I think a lot of bad faith politicking that led to some very effective kind of discourse framing and even like linguistic framing of this issue. That, I mean, now there's so much misinformation, even like when news outlets are reporting on various bills, they'll say like, oh, it's a heartbeat ban bill. Like, don't call it a heartbeat ban, right? You're seeding the terror.
But why is it always a fight and not a conversation? It's always, there's a line drawn and you're either on that side or that side. I don't know when it became political, because it is absolutely political. Similar to COVID.
Political after, well, it's always been political, right? And varying stages.
But so back to when, like, can you go back and give us the evolution of it? Like 1800s and what it was like as an illegal, and then when it became legal, and where the pushback was, and when it actually became this huge division.
Yeah, so I know Samuel Alito played like loosey-goosey with the history in the opinion too. I know a lot of pro-choice historians that are pissed about his characterization. Abortion has always been like a common thing. Like, as long as people have been wanting to have sex and not have babies, they've been finding ways to do that. And so, I mean, you can look historically, like at various plants and,
Ben Franklin wrote recipes on
a guide on how to do it safely. So this was something that was considered normal and considered.
But there was always still a group of people who thought that was wrong and immoral.
Not even yet. Not yet.
Really?
Not quite yet. Even for Abrahamic religions, it was the moment of quickening was the kind of cutoff. So abortion was like a pretty normal part of life. You didn't regulate it because like we don't regulate a whole bunch of our normal stuff from life.
So going back to evolution, like we have no significant brain and we choose, like, we don't want another animal that we've birthed with, eat our child. Going back to that period of evolution, are we?
Well, I'm not sure that we can comment on that. We can speculate about it.
I'm not an anthropologist, but people were also having way fewer periods back in the caveman days because of things like malnutrition and stuff. So I think being burdened with like child after child and being bred to death is maybe not as much of an issue then. But so one of the things that we saw this era, we see the professionalization of medicine. They're trying to kind of, midwives do all that birth stuff. What if we did it instead, right? Kind of wanting to get into that territory.
That is
There's
true.
also concern about white women not having as many babies anymore. Right.
So
and this
when
kind
was
of
that? Where are we in the?
We're in the like mid 1800s.
Mid 1800s. Okay.
So that we've got immigration happening. We've never liked that much, depending on where they're coming from. And it's a normal kind of economic thing. As societies industrialize, there is less incentive to have a ton of kids. So we see white women having fewer children. We see this professionalization of medicine and doctors kind of wanting to scoop up birth.
What do you mean?
Well, that's true. That was part of Semmelweis. There's no question.
Birth.
Absolutely.
It was some like mystical women
OB-GYN folks recognize, I'll just comment on this quickly, that the pregnant woman was a potential gold mine, and to take that away from midwives. There's no question that was happening around the 1830s, 1840s. Absolutely. Yeah. And that we can talk about Semmelweis later on, but let's go back to this. So I think Tom did some research about what was your sense about the Constitution?
Yeah. So and I think it's a bit fallacious to say, well, what would the founding fathers say? But as a reference, the founding fathers thought the topic of abortion to be so trivial that it didn't warrant mention in the Constitution.
Mm.
Yeah,
because
like we don't legislate breakfast cereal,
right?
Or like pants.
And we
don't. They're just like, yeah, pants.
And my wife commented that we don't legislate whether you can get a coronary bypass.
Right.
So you're saying that the evolution was the people saying that this isn't right.
Yeah. And it's around that same time that we see a
Which is
religious
what
shift.
time?
Well, some people said it's not right. But
Mid
not everyone.
1800s, right?
So
it's also,
it was normalized until the mid 1800s.
Well, I'm not sure normalized, but it was
I think
not.
it's still normal. We just have to pretend like it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to go back and see the evolution of how someone from the 1880s got to the 2022.
Mhm. So some more things happened, right? So
when did
let's get into more things.
When did the people start to say like this isn't right and we're stepping aside?
we don't have good poll data from back then, but we can look at what these big institutional moves were that were being made. And one of the big ones is a religious shift. And this is, I mean, the Catholics, right? This was big for Catholicism, but the Abrahamic faiths in general, this was like sort of the rule, is that quickening, or being able to feel the fetus moving inside of you, is when the fetus gets its soul. And if you Google image quickening, there's like a painting of like a baby flying through the sky and like going into like a sleeping woman. And so as long as you were having,
1880s,
that was for like centuries and centuries.
okay.
Right. And something that's notable about that is only the pregnant person can tell you when that happens. Right. It's literally her ability to like feel the movement. Right. But there was the shift. The Catholic Church said, actually, not anymore. Quickening isn't going to be the thing anymore. Now abortion's illegal all the time. Right. And to me, it's difficult to separate that out from a lot of the other stuff that's happening, in this time period. But so those are like three big things that happen. And then we have the passage of what are called the Comstock laws. So Anthony Comstock, one of my students.
Obscenity laws.
Yeah, one of my students, I asked the class, we were doing exam review, and I was like, who's Anthony Comstock? And the student was like, he was that guy that was afraid of sex, right? And I just thought that was so funny. So he was a postmaster general, but he was also this like big anti-obscenity guy. And he wrote this piece of legislation that went into effect that made it a crime to send anything considered obscene through the mail. And this included medical textbooks. This included pamphlets about like the rhythm method. And then this included also the actual instruments, herbs, et cetera, that you would use to do contraception, that you would use to do abortion. And so at this point, everything.
Did he say that in his law? It was like included, but not limited to, and name these, or was that over time courts were like, well, maybe it does apply. This is obscene to me. So
I mean, our trying to figure out what counts as obscene is like been constantly changing, but no, like it was pretty adamant.
His law was like, I don't want people sending obscene child
no condoms
porn
or
my
porn
mail.
Or medical textbooks with pictures of naked people.
But that it said that, or it was just like obscene defined in his mind. Isn't it subjective? I mean,
I don't mean to slow things down. Things that we've been talking about.
This is a 3-hour show, right?
I know we've been talking about quickening. One of the things that we sometimes rush into, but not always, are our sponsors' ability to quicken their product and to tell us, because we know their products were live and beating, and we want them to be shared in this case. So let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back with a powerful discussion with Professor Grace Howard.
Stretch the canvas, rush with madness, is it sadness or just a show?